productive. So we're going to start out, and we've got the gentleman with Computer Solutions East here. And first is Luke Celente. And Luke's got a master's in computer science, also has certifications with Microsoft and Cisco and Apple. And also we've got Alan Hamaoui. And Alan is big on enterprise technology and working on getting that involved in on your IT budget. So that's what they're going to speak about. And we're going to turn it over to you guys because we're running a little bit behind, but I'm sure you're going to be able to tell us everything about that we need to know about cyber technology and the impact of cybersecurity.
Thank you, Dave. Am I on yet? Check. You're up. Yep, there we go. Thank you, Dave. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for attending, and we're proud to be at SFG FOA. And we are here to talk to you about how cybersecurity impacts the budgets and where we are today. Alan and I have been in the industry for over 20 years, so we've seen the world change. We've seen the priorities change. And one of the challenges that we see these days is really on the forefront of the cyber. You hear it in the news, you see it in real life. You may have been impacted personally by having your machines compromised at home or at the office, and it has a major, major impact. For over the last 20 years, people said, oh, I just need antivirus, I need a firewall, things like that. That's not the way things work anymore, and one of the challenges that we see, although there are line items in the budget for cyber, it's really not identified, and it's really the last thing. People aren't excited about insurance, people aren't excited about cyber, but it's very critical. We're going to show you some examples today on why that is critical as well, and some real life examples on the impact if you don't properly budget for, implement, and take it seriously. We're also not going to play the scare game either, but we're going to make you aware to understand how important this is and how you need this as a strategy, right? So we're talking to a bunch of financial folks, not from a technical standpoint, more so to understand that you have to allocate, and you guys have to open up those wallets for the IT and be able to have the conversation with IT. To have that conversation with IT, we're just going to gloss over some high-level concepts. So the CFOs and the financial guys and the accountants can have that conversation with the IT folks and the CTOs to really blend those words together, because it's so many acronyms that you may or may not be familiar with. And we're going to touch on kind of some of the high-level stuff and how to bridge that gap. But the conversation is very important to have, and it really needs to take a higher ranking order these days over hardware, right? Over we need to replace these servers, we need to replace these computers. We really need to think about how to secure environments first before enabling people access. We're going to talk about some of the current cyber threats, how they come about, what are the potential risks, what are the potential damage. And we have some of those real life examples of when cyber happens, systems get compromised, and what does that really mean when a system gets compromised? People say, well, I don't care if people take my Word docs, I don't care if they take my Excel spreadsheets, there's no real information on there. But there is, and this cyber threats now permeate through the safety systems in municipalities and governments that impact the police departments, the fire departments, the traffic signals, and so on. You see, we'll go through, was it the city of Atlanta?
Yes.
Had an issue there. And we're also going to talk about really how do we allocate toward the budget, right? What does that look like? And Alan's going to kind of go through these scenarios and steps moving forward on what this all looks like from a budget line by line item, and from a financial planner, CFO, to accounting and SFG FOA members.
And one thing to keep in mind here as we go through, Luke and I talk a lot about technology and security all the time. My kids actually go to school in Florida. I'm located in Boca Raton. And one of the things that it blows me away all the time is when my kids come home and I see what they're doing at schools right now. The ability, the amount of technology that they're using. And I question all the time, the first thing that comes to my mind is this really secure? We get forms to sign. Today, I think I signed about 20 forms before even I came here, just related to the ability to use a notebook, the ability to use their own phones at school for art school, And I'm like, oh my God, this is so much. Are they getting the talk there? And the talk is what we're going to be talking about today here. So we want to make sure that we have a scope of the conversation. Security can be so big and can be with a lot of technologies and a lot of things that will get out of control in the conversation. So we really want to focus on two things here. And number one is to bring awareness to what cyber threat is, and then bring awareness that although there are all these threats out there that are compromising our livelihoods, our citizens, our constituents, there's also the concept of security, which is constantly evolving to try to minimize the threats that exist out there. And unfortunately, with convenience that we have today of using our phones, using our applications, and exposing yourself, and you're day in and day out dealing with financial information. It can't get more important than that. And as you are sending out that file out there, as you're actually writing something, someone might be looking at your computer right now and you don't know about that. So those are the things that we want to talk about here. Really, what's going on out there, so that you are aware as you're going through the budget. And as we're preparing for this, the first thing that I did was to open up a couple of budgets from some of the cities around here. And I was extremely excited about to see within the key objectives of the year of the budgets, the first thing they had is cyber threat. Investments on cyber security so that we are more safe as citizens. And those are the things that we're going to be talking about. So a threat, it's about damaging and disrupting. And I'm going to tell you, nothing here is personal to you. They're not focusing on your city. They're not focusing on you individually. They don't care. They'll go after anyone that's vulnerable. From a security perspective, there are companies out there and vendors and so on, and everyone is thinking about security. Your IT department wakes up every day. The first thing they're thinking is, how do I make sure that I allow convenience? When someone calls saying that I can't log into this, or someone calls how come that city has this and we don't have it, correct? Because they're thinking day in and day out how to make sure that whatever solution they're gonna put in the budget, correct, can be secure as well. So this slide is very interesting because when I think about security, and a lot of folks here at the same time, correct, we don't think about really what's going on happening outside of where we work. We assume, we make that assumption where everybody has, is I come to work, correct, or I go to school, and there's sort of a safety zone for us. So if you think of it, everything outside is danger. Everything inside is safe, correct? That's how we see it. If we think about, 10, maybe, 15 years ago, that's how it used to be. We on the IT side of the business, correct, your IT department, all they had to think about were really two types of securities. One was they had to protect the router or the firewall we have over there. So I'm assuming everyone here probably has internet at home, and they have their own routers, correct? And back in the days, you didn't have to know what a router is. Today, someone calls and say, okay, you want to have internet? I'm sending a router. You have a router in your home, and it's that's how you do, how you connect, your kids connect, and so on. So that's how we used to think as well. All we had to protect it was one device. There was a little router there. And then you came to work, you did your work. There was the second thing that we had to protect, the physical location. Because everybody thinks, you come in, you have your badge, you scan it, or you walk in, correct? And someone could just do that. They'll take sort of go into your machine, maybe put in a floppy drive, a floppy disk, and then a software gets installed. So if you're able to protect, correct, your building or your office or your offices, you're able to sort of, safeguard. You safeguard the router, you safeguard, the boundaries, you're good. That's how it used to be. Now I'm going to tell you how we think about this. Okay? And it's impossible not to think of this in this way. So I came in, I have a smartwatch. I get my calls in my smartwatch that connect to my phone. I'm assuming, we just, what do we give, Fitbit?
Fitbit.
Someone just won a Fitbit. That's going to be connected. That's going to have a software. So you might say, well, I really protect my work. When I come to work, I know my passwords. I don't share my passwords. I don't share anything, it doesn't matter anymore. Why? Because everything that you're wearing is connecting to the network. And the crazy part is that it's not even you anymore. So, like I said, Luke and I talk all the time about this stuff. And I was telling him, I went to sign up my daughter at school with her. And I'm gonna tell you that, first of all, I thought she took me to school because it's amazing how much she knows. So we get into the class and the teacher hands her over a laptop. And I'm thinking, like, what's going on? This is science. Why she get a laptop? And the teacher says, we're gonna do everything electronically here. And so, to get you started, do you mind signing up to the class on the laptop? So my daughter tells me, go sit down there. So I go sit down there, correct? And I'm like just watching, and then she opens up the laptop, she goes into the browser, she enters her information, and the first thing that comes to me is the fear, because I was like, I don't know if every time that you go into a computer, it prompts you now, correct, on the browser, if you want to save your password. So I'm thinking to myself, did she check that box? That's what came into my mind. And I'm like, okay. I said, Maya, did you check the box? And she's like, don't worry, sit down over there. And then I go sit down over there. So she fills out and she's like, comes down to my information, you have to enter the parents' information. She enters my entire information there. The only thing she was missing was my social security, Then she does the same thing for my wife. And then she's like, do you mind just signing here? So she, all I did was bring my finger, I do the signing, and then she clicks submit, and then panic comes to me again. I was like, okay, hold on. All information is saved into this browser now, correct? And she's like, don't worry, I'm logging out. So that's what kids are thinking right now, because they are already learning at school, correct? That everything is a danger zone. And that's how we on the IT side look at that. So when you're looking at your budget, correct, and you have to make sort of assumptions, and you have to listen to your IT department, you need to make sure that they're making room into that budget for security, because it will impact you. You might have the latest jazzy app that's going to help out the city look better and so on, but at the same time are we really secure? And I'm gonna tell you, I live in Florida, I've been here since 2010, and I find it incredible how fast forwarding we are with technology. It's amazing. And again, just one more story. I was telling to Luke before we came here that we're building our own sort of thing with some of our customers, and I said, look, I went to I downloaded the DMV app to renew my car registration, and they had a bot. They had a DMV bot, and it's like, you're kidding? I was like, no, I'm actually texting my phone with the bot, and the bot is telling me, oh, I can't help you. So I'm like, yeah, even the bot knows that, right? So that's how connected we are, and this is what you need to think when you go to work. When you press the button on everything you're doing, correct, the first thing you need to ask yourself is, am I, making sure that everything that we have is secure? Because remember, now we have a simplistic version of this, and we really talk about like a small office here. But when you start thinking about the dimensions of, a city, correct, and the things that are connected today, and the services that we expect from our government, correct, there's a lot of stuff out there that needs to make into the budget. So without making decisions, and talking to your IT, department, make sure that they are making a room in their budget, correct, for security. So I talk about things that are going on, how the difference between the existing office and what the new office looks like, correct? But what I wanted to bring awareness as well is, because at the end of the day, money is money. There's, it's whatever you collect, you have to spend, correct? And there's not an unlimited amount of money that you can really spend. So on our side, when we are working with other, companies and even your IT department, what they're thinking about in security, they want to spend their money where it's the most important part of spending the money, meaning they look at stats and they're like, okay, so do I spend $1 million, in this thing that only there's a, let's say a 5% threat, correct? Or do I go and spend something that is, has a higher probability of happening? And that's how they're working right now. That's how they're thinking. So this is a very interesting slide, and I'm gonna get close here because of my eyes. We kind of segmented things in really 3 buckets. You have access control, you have data control, and you have communication control. And those are sort of really a simplistic way of segmenting these categories or these buckets, because it comes down to access control first. And I have to say that most of you, are encountering right now one of the biggest problems that everybody has, which is how many username and passwords can you remember, correct? And it's just the magnitude of having to deal with that is just incredible, because at the end of the day you can really remember maybe 1 or 2 usernames, and then you do variations of the password. You add one site will ask you to add a number, the other one will ask you to add 2 numbers. So usually try to do something that you remember, so that you already know that 3 or 4 times that you try, you're going to be locked out. So you have that 4 variation, correct, of passwords that you use, and that's what everybody does. That's pretty much, I do the same thing. Everybody does the same thing, and the challenge with that comes back to how they get information from us, because you are not doing anything wrong. Everybody's like, oh my God, I have my passwords, I don't share, I don't do anything like that. And you know what? They're not even getting those username and passwords from you. When you look at some of the companies out there, the big ones that we all use, correct? They are the ones getting hacked. They're the ones that are, unfortunately, losing your username and password. And guess what? Criminals are very smart. What they do? They share information. They like sharing. So what they do is they'll get username and passwords from one side, and then they'll get another one from another side. And you know what they do? They love doing? They match everything. They do a crossover. They start looking at where you show up, correct? And they start building a database. It's like almost a customer relationship management system they have of you. That's how incredible it is. And on our side, so we come up with different ideas. Okay, so everybody carries a cell phone, correct, or smartphone. So what if we could authenticate you? So you have your variations of username and passwords, but you know what? We're gonna do what's called the multi-factor authentication. And we're gonna send you a text, correct? To authenticate you. You carry your cell phone, you already know your username and password. How likely is that someone is gonna steal your phone and then be able to, so decrease the probability of someone to be able. So that's why we're coming up with all these technologies. And as you look at your budget, correct, and the IT department is like asking for more money to be able to include that, that's the reason behind that. And I have a couple really good stories. Then you're gonna, stand back and think twice about not approving that. You'll see it. And then we have data control. Data control is very similar to access control because it goes back to your file. You're building your spreadsheets, correct? You're sharing them. But are you sharing them? So you share the spreadsheet with me. I take the spreadsheet, I look it over. I share with Luke. Luke looks over the spreadsheet. He shares with someone else. Did you really approve them to see all, everyone to see that spreadsheet? And that's where it comes down to access control. Technology is evolving, so we're able to do more. And the IT department can do even more by safeguarding at a really cost-effective rate, believe it or not. So you can work with your IT department and making sure that they are looking for the solutions that safeguard your files. Because your stuff is very sensitive. And it goes back, we'll talk about, I gave my daughter's example, how her information got submitted with my information and my wife's information. Where is that being stored right now? Who has access to that? And that's something that I was thinking about it, from a data control perspective. Now, the last part of my bucket here is communication control. And, and the beauty is that everything I'm bringing up, I know everybody's confronting here. Or think about it every morning in some sort of way because it impacts your life. So, emails, that's how we communicate. We don't talk to we maybe text people, but really we work through emails. That's what we do. Every day I wake up, I got 10 emails, those are 10 orders that I'm getting to do things. And then I'm assuming that everybody is the same, correct? You get 10 emails from people, and they're like telling you what to do, and you're like, okay, I have what to do today. So, so that's how it goes. And Luke sends me the emails, by the way. It's like, go do this. And the problem is that, that we're confronting now is that someone else is sending an email as you. That's the craziest thing now. That they can, so let's say I'll send you an email from, it would be like fax@computersolutionsis.com, and I work at computersolutionsis.com. That's how we send, we receive a fax electronically, it goes through fax@computersolutionsis.com, and that arrives to 3 mailboxes, correct, that we have. Everybody does that. Your fax machine is smart, it gets that, everybody, but now they're able to spoof that. They're able to basically make sure that, so when you get that email, it went through your email server. I don't want to get too technical, but it gets to you, and you're really thinking that email came from your company. That happens every day. So again, those are the things that the IT department, there are solutions and there are things that we're doing from an IT perspective to make sure that that's not happening. And but it has to go into the budget, and it has to, and we need to bring that awareness of, and I'll get later on talk about that it's not just a machine work here. We can't automate everything, and I'll explain a little bit about how that impacts you. So, I wanted to find out, so it was interesting because when we started putting together the content for this presentation, I really did not have to think really hard on live, cases that happen where the things that I just brought it up to awareness here that are impacting government and the city, okay, and us in general, correct? Everyone at home. So this one here is something, and I don't think I ever forgot this case here. It's 2008, that's 10 years ago. It's just insanity. The city of San Francisco, correct? The city of San Francisco. This is amazing to me. One person, one individual in the entire city had the admin control to what we call their network. So there are multiple networks. There are multiple people that work in different parts of the system, of course. There's one individual that had access, the key, for all the networks. And if you had to do anything in the city, if you had a problem with the 911, and you had to, and the network administrator from the 911 had to do something to fix that problem, correct? They had to call this guy. And he was, in his perspective, he was the savior. He was saving the city from anyone else bringing the city, in the network of the city down, okay? So fast forward a little bit, he's been there for 5 years, correct? And finally someone came to, became his supervisor, and started questions like, how is it possible in the entire city that one person has the key? And start confronting the guy. And I have to say, we on the tech side, we're kind of crazy. We're thinking about technology the whole day. We don't trust anyone. I'm just presenting about lack of trust here, correct? So he was like, you know what? I'm not gonna give you the username and password. You know what they do? They put him in jail. So you think about the story here, correct? So he goes to jail, and then he doesn't want to give the username and password. Finally, the mayor goes talk to this individual, and if you think I'm lying, go search later on, okay? And goes talk to the individual and finally gets the username and password for him. So the lesson that they learn here is, can someone really, access control? One person had access to everything. Lack of process, whatever it was, that's how important access control. So you might have the key right now to something that is very important, correct? And you might be the only one, but it goes back to being able to secure that. What if something happened to that person? He got sick, he was on call 24/7. He was getting calls, he was working, and he was so proud of it. That's the crazy part about this. So, so we need to, this is something that we don't sleep. So as soon as I had to start putting this together, I said, access control, this is gonna be my first business case to talk about. Then data control. And truthfully, if you open up the news, you're gonna find all, like multiple examples, correct, about this stuff. And it goes back to really the ability, I was talking about that example of the spreadsheet. But now, you had a bad day, and then suddenly you forgot the laptop, with all confidential information, correct? What happens there? Is that a technology that's going to safeguard that? And then goes back to this example here. So in 2017, a Secret Service employee left his laptop, her laptop, in the car, and it got stolen. So imagine like having to report that your laptop from the FBI got stolen, correct? And you have to track that down. So that's how, and can I tell you, we're humans, we all have bad days. We wake up, we forget to do something, our kids are screaming on our heads, and it's like this is gonna happen. But the cool part here is that in the IT department, they can have things in place that will safeguard our government. They will safeguard things that we're doing because, again, we're evolving things as we go along. So this is an example that will happen, that is probably happening right now. And we need to make sure that when we look at the budget, as I was reviewing the budget, it's very interesting to me because one, I was very proud to see that a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about here was already part of the budget. There are lines in the budget, if you look it over, that talk about cybersecurity or talk about investment in technology. And the best part of it, as I was reading it, that made me really proud, is that it talks how, it wasn't on the bad side, but it was like how technology can evolve, and present to, to people a better way of living and so on. So it was very incredible. And finally, this one here is, if you think what I just presented was crazy, this to me is the biggest one that I can think of right now that is really fresh, that is happening right now. And we talk about millions of dollars in, in losses, headaches to, constituents, and it's a very sad story. When you think about the magnitude that something like this can happen. So the city of Atlanta, has anyone here ever confronted ransomware? Does anyone knows what ransomware is? Oh, yeah. Okay, cool. See, everybody knows about it. But thinking about the impact on a city, okay, when everything that they have gets encrypted, correct? And you might say, oh, I have, like Luke was mentioning, we look at things like you have an antivirus, correct? And that should be enough. But the interesting thing is that sometimes you're able to, the same way that you install an app on your phone, the same way that you find out about this little program that's going to help you. Maybe it'll be a macro that will go into the Excel, correct? And then will help out doing budgeting. That macro might contain a little bit. It's basically script, correct? Because your computer is connected. Everything is connected. Even your phone, you might download this little software. Very little software. We're talking about like small thing, couple lines of code. And what it does is it creates everything that your computer has access to. It starts encrypting. So it gives that key and locks down the file. So in the city of Atlanta, the way it happened was, and I was reading a couple articles before I came here to talk about it. The mayor, she woke up in the morning. She was checking out her emails, or she went to check out her emails, and amazing enough, she couldn't do that. And then she's like, okay, something's going on my computer. Let me call the IT. So she calls, the help desk, IT help desk, and then they're waiting for the help desk was 10 hours, and she's like, oh my God, something's going on, correct? So basically, that's what happens. Like their servers, everything that was connected. Before I was talking about, the network guy, correct? They had the admin and password. In this case, was even worse. Why? Because the files they had got encrypted, and if you don't have that key, correct, to unencrypt it, then you really, and you think about the keys, like how many bits? It's like insane. It's like correct, it's like 25, 30 characters. It's just impossible to figure out, the key itself. And we're talking about our livelihoods. With one person somewhere in the world, correct, can come up with a software like that and just email to you, or have on a website that you go to download something. So that's what we're confronting. And I just saw this is from June, I think, June 2018, and they already spent another $10 million to try to recover, because they had to unencrypt everything. And the interesting part, again, that people sometimes don't think about, is like, okay, so they had to spend, they could have paid, it was $57,000, I think, that's what they're asking for. But who's asking for this? So let's say they gave the $57,000, to whom? Is that really, for real? Interesting enough, so how important it is for us to be aware of that? So you have about 4,000 ransomware attacks daily. This is incredible, okay? And what I find it more incredible is people's ability to become an entrepreneur. Because the people who wrote the software realized that they could reach out more people if they sold their software to other people to use the software and give them a cut out of whatever they were making. So it became ransomware as a service.
It's a franchise.
It's a franchise. So they call RAS. It's like, so now you think, okay, the kid on the corner is a little weird, correct? And he decides that he doesn't like the neighborhood. Okay, so he's gonna start emailing everybody in the neighborhood list, correct, to make some money out of them. So that's how crazy.
Even from an inside job perspective, some of these entrepreneurs can take this code within your organization and deploy it. Hence, being able to backtrack out to this cut sharing system in order to still make more money, right? Steal and so on. So it's very important that we really start looking at increasing these budgets and understanding that it's also your responsibility to say, we need to add more here, because this has a huge impact. If you have a business that their sole goal is to disrupt, to take money, to hold ransom, that's a serious threat. And if your cities and municipalities aren't, Alan mentioned that there are these line items, right? We haven't been able to find how much is allocated percentage-wise, how many dollars. And the tools and technology exists, and you also need the people to hire and staff to implement and control. But this is if you have a business out there that's attacking your organizations, and some of your people may be compromised and attacked from within, the city of San Francisco, he was almost like a compromised person, but he was friendly enough to be talked down. If you have somebody else who is not, they can really cause some serious financial damage and potentially other damage as well. Like power grid stuff and all that good stuff.
Okay, so we're getting close to a final stage here. And I think from my perspective, when Luke and I talk about this, we always talk, there's always a need for technology, correct? But in the end of the day, you need to start with people. That's really the starting point here. And that's very important to understand. When you look at your budget, and people are trying to sell you that they need to buy more servers, they need to buy more cameras, and they need to do all this stuff that is hardware and technology based, correct? The question that you have to have in the budget, when you add things, when you add technology, correct, on that side, you need to add people. Things don't run on their own. And a lot of the budgets that I look at, because you're always trying to cut corners, correct, to fit as much as you can. You forget about the fact that things don't run on their own, and they require the right process in place. And, I was mentioning about having the latest Jazzy app, and someone needs to be. It's a product, it's a service that you're providing to your constituents, and someone needs to be looking at it from an organizational perspective, and that's where we have, the IT security advisor or the IT security committee. So you can form internally, correct, as you're meeting with other directors and committees, and say, do we have time to talk security here? Because this is really a forefront of what we need to be talking now. And you need to have processes in place. You gotta have, and I will go back to talk about my daughter's example, and I found phenomenal that they were asking me for her to use her smartphone at school. And they're asking for my permission, you know, in the form alerting me that she was going to use the phone. That's a process. I could have voiced my opinion and say, you know what, I don't want to use your phone at school. So someone is thinking about that, and that's a good thing. And then you have training, correct? People training. Students have to get training on security, IT security. And then your staff needs to get trained. Very important, you know, we're bringing, and this is what we're doing here, correct? Bringing the awareness. This is the training part of getting to know how much is out there that can impact. And I show 3 examples that they're calamities almost, you know, and you think about it, it's like we all wake up every day to do the best that we can. And within 1 second, everything that we've done, correct, all those years can be gone. So, you know, I'm not trying to bring the doom world here, but at the end of the day, we need to be thinking about this, and that's what we do. That's our job. You know, your job is to go look at the budget and say, why you have this here? And then our job is to really make sure that we have some, you know, a role within our organization on the IT side, think about security, think about the processes, think about the people, and then we can go out there and get the right technology, correct, to safeguard what we do. Okay. Last thing here, you know, this is actually from Gartner, and if you look at, you know, they've done a research and survey. And if you look at the second thing that is most important, correct? Cyber information security. So it's right there, you're already thinking about this. Your IT department is bringing this up. And when you look at the number 1, cloud services, they actually go hand to hand. You know, because cloud services basically means that all these big companies out there, they're able to provide you with more value by bringing your stuff into the data centers, correct? So that implies that they need to conform to the same security process that you already have. And that's what it's all about. So you can't do one without doing number 2. You know, they're sort of like connected there.
I think some of the things to take note, even on this slide where they're budgeting, even the way technology is sold now has changed over the last 5 years. It really is subscription based, and for a lot of municipalities who are doing like bonds to do do video conferencing systems or phone systems, some of the issues that come up is how are these multi-year subscriptions paid for? So there's some challenges there in terms of actually when the pen hits the paper on how these things get implemented, and it's moving more towards subscription. And when we're looking at these subscription products versus these one-time lift and shift products that we look at, say, okay, we need these video surveillance system, it's a $2 million project, and then where does that maintenance go down the road versus a lot of these new, let's say, phone systems that are monthly recurring cost or annual recurring cost? How are those allocated for? And how can you take advantage of the programs that are available to your different municipalities and governments, and we sew those fine lines through there. So for some of the school stuff, we're tying in a lot of those physical security grants along with some of the cyber stuff to really blend the two together. It's we're trying to get it in there because we just can't enable anymore. We have to secure, then enable, and that's something to keep in mind. Last but not least, security overall, it's a big, broad topic. Think of marketing. Marketing, you have a newsletter, you have an event, right? You have coupons, right? Everything that makes up this one thing called marketing. Same thing with security. It's not a single point piece, like mowing the lawn, right? You mow the lawn, then the hedges are grown. Then you clip the hedges, now you have weeds. Then you have to water the flowers. So it's this evolving system that you have to really maintain. And it's not a one-stop shop. It's like, okay, we're gonna buy this product. And with a lot of the budgets that we've seen, it's like, oh, we have X dollars towards purchasing this software that gives us security. And that's really not the way to think about it. It's an ongoing process. The tools, which are the technologies or the things that you purchase, is only one piece of the puzzle. It has to be implemented. You need people, like Alan said, to support and maintain this. You need to build processes. So that may not even come out of the IT budget, and you guys can be creative there, right? So how do we maybe we roll this into compliance? Do we have a compliance officer? So how do we really tighten this whole thing up, document it, and not look at it as a transaction, but as a way of living at this point?
Okay. All right.
One of the things that my company does is they'll send out spoof emails, and the whole, it's basically entrapment is what it is. So if you click on that link, whatever it is, like I think last week, one of the Kardashians died, is what the email. So you would think that a lot of people would click on it trying to figure out what's going on. But if you click on the link, what'll happen in about 2 or 3 days, you get an email from your boss, basically saying, you clicked on this email, you didn't verify, the source. And what it, for me at least, it made me paranoid. I'm double checking, making sure that if I do get an attachment, I know who it's from. If I'm not sure who it is, I'm gonna call them. If it's an email, look at the email address, the person who's sending it, because it could be transposed numbers, letters, and that would get you that. I wouldn't notice, and I'm opening. But the bottom line, it makes everyone more aware of what's going on, and not so much because you might get in trouble from your boss, but it's also just the shame and the guilt that you could have compromised this. No, seriously, it's a good motivator. That you could have compromised your security on that because you clicked on it because you were too busy not paying attention to this email that on the normal presents, you probably would have stopped.
Yeah, that's great. That falls under the people training concept, and that's kind of the continuing education. I think overall, a lot of people walk into work, they have a new computer, a new software, somebody made a decision to upgrade the software, they never get trained, nobody knows how to use it, right? So for you guys, that's great. And it's showing an example that they're trying to train you and trying to make everybody aware. And that's another piece of the budget that needs to be allocated too. And Alan mentioned that on the slides, part of the people training. You guys are at the forefront. You guys are clicking the button. Those big hacks that you see at Yahoo and all this other stuff, those are targeted. A lot of the stuff that happens from the other slides are phishing. The Kardashians, who doesn't want to know who died? Right? So you click the button, There are technology products out to help with this stuff, right? To help prevent. But once again, it's the people, it's the products, it's the training. And it's no longer just, okay, we're gonna allocate 5% and let the IT department figure it out. No, we all have to take a role in allocating and understanding where the stuff is going and raising the red flag, saying, hey, I think we need to do this, or maybe we can, this people training, we're not gonna take that out of IT, we're gonna take that out of HR. And maybe with, some of this security processes, we'll take it out of general administration, right? So there's ways to kind of circumvent and navigate those numbers that make you more secure.
When you move your data to the cloud, your servers on the cloud, how do you protect that?
There's a lot of tools out there, and quite frankly, you're more secure in the cloud than you are on premise these days. The big companies like Microsoft and Google and all these guys, AWS, they're cranking out these security products at low costs, right? Making them available for you to lock this stuff down. And effectively, you have to have a process that has to be enforced. You have to be able to report, and you have to be able to test all this stuff. Those tools exist in the cloud. Chances are they don't exist on premise. So the availability is there, the cost is low, and it's up to IT it's actually up to the organization, or the government, whatever, to have the staff to be able to do that work. IT is an operational cost. It's always the worst line item on the list. But the cloud is safe, more safe than on-prem. Anybody else?
That's it, I guess. Thank you, everyone.
We'll do your last